adaptability. 10 signs of an adaptable, I should have said person on there, I've missed the person off. 10 signs of adaptability, or 10 signs of an adaptable person, okay? Let's go into these and have a look at them, okay? So, number 1, adaptable people are open to change and know how to manage the 5 stages of transition, okay? So, change. We've covered change off a number of times on these courses, and people are yet again going through more changes at the moment. Hopefully now coming out of final lockdown, and then there's going to be a bigger change, reintegrating people back into offices and organisations and all this type of stuff that's going on. So being adaptable is being open to change. Notice it doesn't say you're going to love change, okay? Because we know that people generally go through a bit of a negative drop. Even if that's a positive change, there's a bit of a negative drop. The negative drop in a positive change, by the way, is doubt that it's actually going to happen. So there's a lot of people that would have felt quite good Monday evening. Yeah, Monday evening would have been quite good. You know, Boris is saying this, we're giving ourselves 5 weeks apart from doing these things. Actually, you know, I think this will be the end one. You know, legal stuff could be over by the 21st of June or July, whatever it was. Golf courses open on the 29th of March, which will be fantastic. And all this type of stuff, okay? So people go up in a high because of the change. And then the very next morning, the first news headline I get is Matt Hancock says that you know, these dates may not be kept to, or something along those lines, because if we don't do what we should, then it's going to be longer. And all of a sudden now people are in a drop of doubt, especially based on what's in your filing cabinet for the last 12 months, okay? So we'll go into doubt, and hopefully if we go to the timeline that's been suggested, we'll start coming back out of it. So even though this is perceptionally a good change, there's still going to be that drop into the rut, and of course if it's a negative change, then you're going to get that drop into a rut. So it's not about being brilliant at change, it's not about embracing and loving every single change, it's just about being open to it. So you know that change is going to keep coming and coming and coming, and you know, this last 12 months has been one of the best examples of that, hasn't it? Where change just keeps coming and coming and coming and coming. So adaptable people are open to change and know how to manage those 5 stages of transition. If there's any newer guys on the session today, if you haven't come across those 5 stages of transition, it's generally change, shock, denial, recognition, and acceptance. Okay, and if you go onto the YouTube channel, you'll undoubtedly be able to find some of the sessions that I do using the change curve, transition curve, sometimes the grief curve, or the Kubler-Ross curve that you might have come across, okay? So, adaptable people experiment, and they are open to change, okay? And it's like my little experiment picture here. The reason it's the experiment is because you have to experiment when changes come up. Do I do this? Do we do that? What's the best thing to do? So they're open to change and they experiment, okay? Number 2, they look at opportunities, not failure, okay? So to adapt is to grow, to change, and to change you must forego what you once believed to be right, classify it as wrong, and then adopt what you now believe to be the new right. A little bit wordy, isn't it? I apologise, there's lots of words in this particular session today, but I wanted to give you all these descriptions for it. So they look for opportunity and not failure, and what might have been right in the past might be wrong now, which means you need to do something that's right. Now, I've put a picture up here of the British Army. There is a really great advert on the radio at the moment. It might be on the TV as well, but it's on TalkSport quite a lot. And it's I have mentioned it before. It's a female officer that's coming to the end of a run, and she's kind of out of breath. the caption says, "That's the sound of failure." And she says, "Yeah, today I failed by 40 seconds on my run. But yesterday, last week I failed by 2 minutes on my run. So I failed by 40 seconds today. I know what I need to fail by tomorrow to be a winner by the end of the week." Okay? And I just think it's a fantastic advert because it really brings this home. Sometimes we have to fail to be great, don't we? Sometimes we have to fail to get it right next time. So adaptable people, they will look for opportunity and not see failures. If you do fail at something, that these types of people will look at that failure as, well, where's the opportunity in it? Where's the learning in it? What can I do better next time? Okay? So, number 2, opportunity, not failure. Number 3, adaptable people think ahead. As you can see, my little picture didn't really do that, did they, on that picture? Always open to opportunity. Adaptable people are always on the lookout for improvement, minor tweaks that will turn ordinary into extraordinary, because they're not married to one size fits all, and they will also think ahead as well. So they try and look at different scenarios and all that type of thing. But notice here, okay, notice there's a big difference between somebody being adaptable and looking ahead and doing planned scenario thinking versus somebody who is just thinking of every possible what if scenario that then worries them. So there's a big difference between the two. We all of us no doubt do some what if scenarioing. So this has happened, what if that, what if this, what if that happens, what if this, and so on and so on and so on. There's a difference between letting your brain just run away, okay, and actually sitting down and doing some scenario thinking correctly with some structure behind it. There's a big difference, but adaptable people will do the scenario thinking that goes ahead, okay? Number 4, adaptable people don't whine, okay? If they can't change or influence the decision, you guessed it, they adapt and move on, okay? So we've talked about moaning before on these sessions that I've been doing and whining. We do know that a very small moan can be quite cathartic, okay? So if you need to have a bit of a whinge or a bit of a whine, sometimes when we have a moan or we have a whinge, we feel a bit better afterwards, okay? We've all done that in the past. Got it off your chest and had a bit of a whinge, and then you can move on, okay? The issue is when the whine is too long or not in the right place at the right time with the right people, okay? So if it's a whine in business, if it's a moan in business, then you need to make sure you do that with a peer or a boss, never a subordinate, and it's always at the right time and at the right place with nobody else in earshot. And then you whine or moan for 5 minutes, you get it off your chest, and you then ask the question, so what are we going to do about it? For instance, so how do we adapt and move on from it, as it says here, okay? If you have a moan and don't then choose what to do with it, I'll guarantee you a week later you'll be moaning about the same thing. So taking action on that moan is quite important, and having that moan in the right place at the right time and for the right length of time. Now it only takes about 300 seconds to release negative chemical out of your system, about 300 seconds, okay? That's 5 minutes, okay? So it shouldn't go on any longer than that, really. The only reason it will go on longer is if you've got lots of negative chemical in your system because you're annoyed or whatever it may be, okay? But adaptable people, they won't harp on that, they'll get it out and then they'll take some action on it. So if you want to call this adaptable people don't whine, they have a solution-focused, controlled whine, if you want to look at it that way. Controlled moaning to do something about it, okay? So that's quite a good one, number 4. they don't get stuck in the rut, it says there as well. So that rut of change, they don't get stuck in that rut. I've said this to you guys many times. If you've got people in your business that are still moaning about something that happened 10 years ago, then something changed 10 years ago they didn't like, they got stuck in a rut and they've never got out from it, okay? So they're quite rigid. They're not very adaptable, because otherwise they would have adapted and moved on by now, okay? And this year, in the last 12 months, people have been asked to be adaptable, and that's why it's caused a lot of imbalance, a lot of lack of gestalt is the term that you guys might have heard me say before, but a lack of imbalance, because people have been expected to be adaptable, and then they're gonna have to be adaptable again when we start to integrate people back into the working world, when COVID is finally under control, and so on and so on. Kids go back to school and everything else goes on. I was on a course yesterday, and there was one of the delegates talking about when kids go back to school, and he said he's got the 8th of March now scribed into the brick on his house, so his children can go to go back, because everybody has had to be adaptable in the last 12 months, but some people haven't liked it, and that's because they probably weren't that adaptable in the first place. So in order to be more adaptable, it's okay to have a whinge and a moan, but then we need to go and do something with it, find a new way of doing things, adapt and move on, adapt and move forward, okay? Okay, number 5. Adaptable people talk to themselves. You guys know that I've talked about talking to ourselves for a long while. This is a slightly different look at it. When they feel their blood pressure is rising, their teeth coming together and their fist clenched, they flip the mental switch through self-talk. Engaging in positive self-talk is the single greatest habit you can learn for yourself. Now, you guys know that we've talked about self-talk a long time. I know some of you have gone out and bought the book, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. This in particular is about when you can feel the red mist rising. You feel the red mist rising, and you can put some triggers, some self-talk triggers into place. Now, for those that, again, have watched the sessions, you will know I talk about pathways in the brain. These are called dendrites, these are neurons. When you have a thought, electrochemical information goes down a pathway, and so on and so on and so on. And at the end of the pathway, you basically get your output, okay, or your behavior, okay? What adaptable people are very, very good at doing is, when something has riled them up, when the blood pressure's going up, they're getting stressed, and so on and so on. What they're very good at doing is having a word with themselves, putting some self-talk into a set of triggers, so that they know what to say to themselves in those situations, and they avert, if this is the I'm getting mad pathway here, what they do is actually avert the chemical. They avert the chemical into let's get it done. Get it done pathway. Okay? So instead of going down the I'm stressed, I'm starting to lose it path, they're able to put a trigger in place, a self-talk trigger. And again, there's some stuff on the YouTube channels about this, because there's 3 different types of trigger. You've got specific triggers, generic triggers, and then ones around gestalt as well that are in there. But they avert the chemical, they move the chemical down a different path, and they do it by having a word with themselves. Okay, so adaptable people talk to themselves in the right way when they need to have that conversation. Okay, number 6. Adaptable people don't blame. They don't blame a situation. They're not a victim to external influences, because they're proactive. To adapt to something new, you must forego the old. Adaptable people don't hold grudges or spew blame needlessly, but instead absorb, understand, and move on. This is again quite wordy, apologies for that, but adaptable people don't blame stuff for happening. Okay, so you know, again, you could use, COVID as an example. We've been in COVID for a year now. I had a conversation with a client last week, and they are having to bring people together because the COVID excuse for things not being done on time, people are still using it. Now, in this particular business, they adapted. People had to work from home and so on, a lot like you guys, and people were given leeway. People were given leeway because obviously people were working in different ways. You couldn't see people face to face. People were learning new technologies and so on and so on and so on. But as my client rightly said, we've been doing that for a year. We've been doing that for a year now. So actually, who are the people that have adapted and moved on and are doing what we need them to do? Who are the people that are going, yeah, well, I can't do it properly because of COVID? That ship sailed a little bit now, hasn't it? I know there are still some things you can't do, like all go and be in a room together and so on and so on. Albeit, I think some of the guys up in Rotherham are kicking off some face-to-face training again soon. But it's kind of gone, hasn't it now? And you'll start to notice this. Listen to people. There are people out there now that have adapted. This is the way it's going to be. Do you know what? It's going to be many, many, many more months, if not to the rest of the year, until, and that's if the roadmap goes to plan, until we can start getting back to some kind of normal. But actually, some people have adapted. They're doing it the new way. They're just cracking on with it. They're just getting on with it. This is a new way of doing it. Some people are still blaming, well, I can't do it properly because I'm not in that situation. The problem is now we've been doing that for a year, haven't we? So again, adaptable people won't do that, but inflexible people will still go back to, well, we've got that excuse, it's been working for the last year, so it's still working now. But it's starting to run out, isn't it? And don't get me wrong, take this with a pinch of salt. I know there are some things that are still tremendously difficult because of the remoteness of what we're doing, but maybe there's one or two people that are banding about that excuse a little bit more now, and actually it's not about that excuse anymore. It's about making sure we're adaptable and we stay adaptable as an organisation. Yeah, quite interesting conversation I had with that client last week. Okay, number 7. Adaptable people don't claim fame. For anybody that is my age and below, you'll probably recognise that. The kids from Fame. If you're a lot younger than me, you might not know who they were, but that took me a little bit when I was looking for a picture for this slide. So they don't care about the limelight because they know it'll all soon burn out. Okay, so they don't do it for fame because actually fame doesn't last very long unless you do another thing. Okay, rather than wasting effort on temporary issues, they shift their focus to the next obstacle to get ahead of the game, so that when everybody else finally jumps on board, they're already moved on to the next challenge. What a fantastic paragraph that is, guys. Yeah, they don't care about the limelight. They know it will soon burn out. They don't want to deal with temporary issues. They deal with those quickly and move on to the next big thing. So what's next? Let's look forward and keep moving forward. So you'll never find a truly adaptable person that's doing it all for fame. They're not doing it for that. They're doing it for deal with, to move on, to be ahead of the game. Okay. Number 8. Adaptable people know what they stand for. Okay. So this is something we touched on when we talked through the 3 sessions of resilience over the last few weeks. Okay. The choice to change isn't an easy one. Okay. It's always challenging, as we know. However, neither is the choice to remain the same. So, just before I move on any forward, there's a couple of things to think about here, okay? I've recently been doing some work on what are the drivers of change in an organisation, okay? And you've got all the normal stuff, market conditions, the pandemic, competition. You've got all the normal things for drivers for change in an organisation, okay? But there's one that a lot of people forget. And it is the status quo. And the reason they forget them is because it's a challenging one to actually make sure you're doing. And what I mean by that is if you if you haven't changed for a long period of time, that in itself gives you a reason to change, okay? And it says here, however, neither is the choice to remain the same. So, 2 points that I want to make on this slide. First one is, I know there are people that will tell me if it's not broke, don't fix it. I understand that, okay? But if you wait till something's broke, it's too late to fix it. And there might be a better way. So one little tip to take away from today, adaptable people aren't happy with the status quo for very long. So if they've just done something, made a change, and now that change is playing out, that will be great, but only for a certain period of time, and then they'll be on to looking to renew it again. Now some people kind of go, oh my God, they've done this, they put it in, and now we're changing it again. Yes, but you might need to, because staying the same for a prolonged period of time isn't very useful. So that's the first thing that I want to focus on. Choosing to adapt to something new and forego the old requires a strong understanding of your personal values, knowing what's important to you and what isn't. That cajoles you along the path of adaptability. So what that is getting at is, you know what you stand for, your vision, your values, the type of person you are. If you know that and you've done some work on it, it's easier to be adaptable around things, because you know what you stand for. And normally any external influences doesn't have to change who you are and what you stand for. Okay? External influences are external, they're not internal. Okay? So knowing who you are and what you stand for helps you be more adaptable, and people that are adaptable aren't very happy with the status quo after a certain period of time. They want to be able to move and adapt and move forward. So just bear that in mind, that sometimes we forget that in business. One of the biggest drivers for change in business could be that actually things have stayed the same for too long. Yeah, rather than potentially any of the other external drivers that we talked about, okay? Number 9, adaptable people see systems. Okay, adaptable people see the entire forest rather than just a few trees. They have to, otherwise they would lack the repertoire and context from which to base their decisions on to adapt. So again, a little bit wordy, but what it's saying is adaptable people don't very rarely look at situations as a standalone. They will see it as a bigger system. They will see, if we do that, that will fix that, but what will happen to that, and then how will that work, and actually, is it that needs fixing, or is it these 3 steps here first? Okay, so adaptable people see systems. The great thing about systems is that you can learn all about systems. So you can go on courses to learn how to think systematically and see systems and things and patterns and stuff. Some people are more attuned naturally, I would give you that. Some people might be more attuned naturally. Now, there's an argument over the word natural. Is it nature or is it nurture? Yeah, so are you more attuned to see systems because of DNA? Or are you more attuned to see systems because maybe you were brought up that way? Or you went to school to be an engineer, for argument's sake, and you got used to flow systems and all this, so on and so on, lots of different things in there. The great thing is you can grow it if needs be. Okay, so adaptable people see systems. Number 10 then, for adaptability, and then we're going to finish the session off with creativeness. Okay, so adaptable people stay current. If you want to adapt to change, you must know what to adapt to and why it's important. So earlier on we said about resourceful people having knowledge. Very, very important for adaptable people to also find all of that knowledge as well, so they know what to be able to adapt to. Or even if nobody can tell them what to adapt to, they can take up as much knowledge as possible and then extrapolate the best place to adapt to afterwards. Communication is at the heart of everything we do, and adaptable people realize the impact of their words, tone and body language have on others. Adaptable people realise the impact their words, tone and body language have on others, which is why they plug and play according to personalities involved. So this one links in to the work that we've done around personality profiling and emotional intelligence. Adaptable people stay current, but not just with news, not just with external news. They stay current with how people work and constantly grow their emotional intelligence. Okay, so this goes all the way back to what type of my personality am I? I'm a high red. You know, if I'm dealing with a high blue, how can I adapt my profile to get the best out of them? And it's all about growing emotional intelligence. By the way, the one before, number 8, know what you stand for, is also about emotional intelligence. If you know what you stand for and you know what your values are, you've done a bit of soul-searching. Yeah, you've started to learn more about you as a person. So that's about emotional intelligence as well, okay? So, number 10, adaptable people can stay current, but remember, not just with news, they stay current with how people work and they constantly grow their own emotional intelligence.